Hello, it's Sandy with Sandy Cogdill Designs, and today I have it's kind of a make-believe shaker card. I am using Trinity Stamps soup can card die set along with the Tiny Bandage die. I had set out to make a shaker card. Unfortunately, my bandages didn't really shake or move like I wanted them to. So we just kind of glued them in the thing, but it still looks like a shaker card. Anyway, go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. You can subscribe to my channel just by clicking that button below. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill Designs or on my blog www.sandycogdilldesigns.com. Let's get started. All right, when I make shaker cards, I generally prefer to use this method as opposed to using foam tape. Foam tape's great and it works for certain situations, but then you have that whole stickiness issue and it's showing. So what I usually do is make my well for my shaker card out of cardstock. So here I am taking the two pieces that make up the shaker element of the card, and I taped them together to create a frame. Then I ran it through my die cut machine 5 times. I'm using 110-pound cardstock. 5 to 6 times is the general rule. That's just about the same depth as most foam tapes. But it's also going to depend on what you're putting in your shaker. Sometimes the clay shakers are really thick and you need that extra space, but for this particular card I've cut this frame out 5 times and I'm going to glue all of those pieces together to start making my well. Okay, I want to tone down the turquoise color in the back of that jar. I wanted to help it get a little bit more dimension. So I've cut a piece of vellum the same size as that back, and I'm going to adhere it to my well. I'm going to be super careful not to get any of the glue on the vellum because it will definitely show. Once I get that vellum applied, then I'm going to apply glue again just to those outside edges, and I'm going to place my turquoise backing on the back of my well. Okay, now I need to make my bandages. So I need to make 8 bandages in total. I'm going to start out with apricot cardstock. I'm going to take saltwater taffy distress oxide ink, and I'm going to go around the edges of the bandage and the edges of the little gauze pad that goes on top. I like to do this most of the time with my die cuts. I think it just helps define those edges and kind of give it a little bit more dimension. Once I get those shaded, I'll go ahead and glue my little gauze piece to the center of that bandage. And then on one of the bandages, I've used the die that comes with that set to cut out a little heart. And I also heat embossed a little frowny face on it. That is going to be my center bandage. Here I have 6 of my bandages, and they are the ones that are going to be going on the inside of my shaker. Like I said earlier, I had wanted to leave them loose in there, but they were not going to shake right. They all just fell to one side, so I decided the best way to do it was to glue them onto the back of my well. It takes me a little bit to figure out just how I want to place those bandages in my well. I just want to make sure that they're all seen and that it gives the appearance of a bunch of bandages stacked up in a bottle. I know this is a pill bottle, but I still think it kind of works well with the bandages. Kind of fits that whole doctor medical theme thing that I've got going here. I'm going to adhere my piece of acetate to my little pill bottle frame. Again, I'm going to be very careful not to get any glue on that acetate. It's just hard to get cleaned up after that happens, if it happens. Now that I've got that put together, I'm going to use the glue again, just on the outside edges, and adhere that little window to my pill bottle. Again, being very careful not to get any glue out onto that acetate. I've cut the lid to my pill bottle out of white cardstock. I really like the way this lid is actually two pieces. I think it really helps give it a little bit extra dimension. I'm going to take some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to hit all of those edges. I'm also going to brush just a tiny bit on the embossed edges of the outside of that cap. I think it's just a nice way to accentuate just the texture of that piece. Now we're going to start assembling our bottle. I'm going to run just a thin bead of glue at that top edge of my bottle, and then I'm going to apply the outside edge of that cap. Okay, next I'm going to apply some glue dots or foam dots on the back of the top of my pill bottle. I think it's funny that I've cut it actually from a piece of cardstock that I had stamped earlier. I am very frugal with my cardstock, and this is not actually just a basic white cardstock that you buy in a pack of paper. I like the Basil Coconut Swirl white because it blends in really nicely with some of the patterned papers that have white on it. If you look at those real close, those aren't a brilliant white. So this one blends in nicely. So I save every little scrap of that cardstock because I used to get it at Joann's, and now Joann's is closing. So when I run out, I'm going to have to order it online. And then I have the whole issue of shipping charges, and I hate to pay shipping, so then I always buy more than I actually need of all kinds of different things. Anyway, you know the struggle. I found that when I was putting this together that I needed to put some glue dots at that top edge of where the pill bottle cap was. It just needed that little bit extra support. Now I'm going to glue my pill bottle to my card shape. This is a little bit tricky because the top is not connected to the bottom of the pill bottle. It's kind of hard to figure out where to get that so that it's centered on the front of that can shape. I've found that it's pretty close to 1/4 of an inch on all sides, so that's pretty much where I start. Also, this is definitely a time where I appreciate the liquid glue. That gives me a little bit of time to wiggle it around to get it into the right spot, as long as I don't press down too hard on those foam dots at the top. But I'll get that put on, and then I will apply my pill bottle top, and the front of this card is almost done. For the inside of this card, I am using a stamp from the Healing Wishes stamp set. The white piece that I'm actually adhering to the inside of this card was cut using the soup can die set, and I just ran the whole thing through my die cut machine, and then I cut out the one side that was going to be in the opening, if that makes any sense. Usually I have to trim just a smidgen off of that inside edge, the edge that butts up to the fold, just because there's a little bit of wiggle room on that die, and I don't want it to extend to the outside, to the right side of that card. So I've used the die, and then I'll just glue that on the inside, lining it up with that edge. On the front of the card, the sentiment is from the Indispensable stamp set. I've stamped that and used the bubble die to cut that out and adhered it to my card kind of in a diagonal at the bottom right hand corner. Now I'm going to put a band-aid at that corner. Now I could just glue that on and trim it with my scissors, but one of my superpowers tends to be overcomplicating things. So I am going to use the die to actually cut those edges off of the Band-Aid so it's a nice clean cut. Like I said, I generally overcomplicate everything. And see how nicely that fits? I am probably the only person that would even notice that. Anyway, I'm going to get that glued on, and then I'm going to take my last one and glue that across the top of my pill bottle. And that pretty much completes my card. And there we have our faux shaker card. I sure wish that the bandages had turned out. I had even thought about the one bandage in the center being able to move back and forth, but it was still catching up on the other ones. So rather than try to remake the wheel, this is what we came up with. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill Designs or on my blog, www.sandycogdilldesigns.com. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.